Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nicholas Delianakis. This session is about the overall orientations of Cluster 4, Digital, Industry and Space. We will be using Slido in this session, both to collect questions and to get your ideas. The first question will come very soon, so please log in now. And the code for this room is hash or dièse R Romeo 900. In this session, we want to hear from you about how you see the three main objectives that we have proposed for this cluster, and which our commission moderators will introduce one after the other briefly. And also would like to know what you consider to be important elements for success. And of course, whether you have other great ideas at the end. We have four distinguished moderators to guide the discussion, three from the Commission. But first I would like to introduce Ms. Fernanda Ferreira Dias, who is Director General of Economic Activities of Portugal's Ministry of the Economy. She is an expert in international relations and specialized in international and economic relations. And amongst other things, she has been a senior counselor in Portugal's permanent representation in the EU, responsible for industry and competitiveness. Now, before we start, we would like to ask through Slido whom we have in this room, whether you come from industry, large industry, an SME, academia, research center, NGO, or whether you're a policy maker, and so on. So could we have 1 minute to collect the answers to that question?
It moves.
It's a fair balance, obviously. Not the balance we see in our projects, but that is, but it is a fair balance for this discussion. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Ferreira Dias, who will give us a perspective of a member state. Ms. Ferreira.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. We are here to speak about space, digital, and industry. And in fact, space technology is around us and in our daily lives. Every time we use our mobile phones, for example, we are using the Galileo navigation system. I don't know if you have ever thought about that. That's the EU's navigation satellite system. Whenever you want to use Google Maps or any other more accurate information on location, then there is some satellites guiding it. Or Copernicus, the European Union's Earth observation program. Space is around us. So there are a lot of apps in our phone that are based in Copernicus system. I particularly like one app, which is iBeach for the seaside and to get some information on the beaches. So I really recommend that one to you. Then we have digital. Digital, I remember in 2005, I read a very interesting book, the best-selling book from Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. And this was an analysis, primarily in the early 21st century, on how the inequalities between rich and poor in the world became blurred with the digital because access to information was made egalitarian. So digitalization and technology are really also some industry transformers, and they are the solution drivers for the great challenges that we face. We face another great challenge, not only in the EU, but in the world, which is, I took this from my hotel this morning, think green. So think green, everything is around us, so the digital, the industry, the think green, everything is around us, these three words. From a member state point of view, I would say that the evolution for the combination of these three is to have in the EU, have it open to new actors and make technology, digital and industry inclusive. So we have the climate neutral, green, fair and social Europe challenges. That's what we discuss in councils, in the Council of Ministers or in other forums. For example, for Portugal, this week our president just signed a declaration with other 31 heads of state and government, in which it's an appeal to the international community to make 2019 the year of climate ambition. This was during the United Nations Climate Action Summit in New York this week. This to tell you that Portugal is committed in playing its part. We participate as a member state, like others, in all that is going on right now at the moment. And we want to promote innovation. One thing we discuss is that innovative firms significantly outperform non-innovators in terms of both revenue and employment growth. So let's go back to the global challenges. For this, in the EU, we have a dependency on imported key technologies and raw materials, difficulties in financing high-risk investments, and global competition. I would say that these are more or less, from our perspective, the big challenges. Industry is also enabling as a way to enhance social inclusion, and we want this to happen. So the link between digitalization, industry, and research and innovation is key to promote competitiveness and sustainability, sustainable growth. What else would I like to emphasize? At the same time, we in the European Union, we make technology developments that must follow a human-centered approach. What is this? We have to think how this can perform, how technology, how digitalization, how industry needs to perform to go and meet the interests of people. We support as well, from a member state perspective in Portugal, the inclusion in the value chains of SMEs and startups so that they can contribute across Europe as a key to knowledge transfer and not only big industries. It is crucial to have also open value chains, open subcontracting, support measures to promote this openness. And we need a skilled workforce for this. We are very worried in Portugal to promote the training and skills of our workforce. And finally, I would say that financing conditions and non-financial factors are both key to maximize digitalization potential and the potential it will have. So this is basically the opening setup, I would say, from the perspective of a member state to the themes that we discuss and to the themes that we discuss both at national level and at EU level in this context of competitiveness. We have now some other speakers next to me. I would like to present them. Miss Lucilia Scioli. She's the Director for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Industry. She works in Director General Connect at the European Union, and she's responsible for the coordination of the European digitization of industry strategy and for policy development in the area of artificial intelligence. I then have Mr. Mark Nicholas to my right. He's the head of unit in DG GROW, DG Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs. We work together in the forum of important projects of common European interest. And Mr. Mark Nicholas is the head of unit Innovation Policy and Investment for Growth. And finally, Mr. Peter Drull. He's the director for the Prosperity Directorate. And I particularly like this name because I think it's really inspiring. He's the director for Prosperity in DG Research and in Director General for Research and Innovation. I just told Peter that in the United Arab Emirates, they have a Minister of Happiness. And I think this is really very inspiring. And it's a woman there, and she is very inspiring herself. So I think the Commission is on the right track, and we have Peter as the Director of Prosperity. I would also like to recall that from now on, you can ask the questions via Slido while the speakers will talk. An upvote, sorry. So please, Lucilia.
Okay, good afternoon. I am from DG Connect, but the way we have actually decided to address you is through the three main objectives that will be driving the cluster called industry space, digital industry space, sorry, yes. In Horizon. So I will be talking to you very briefly about competitiveness, and then Peter will address the planet dimension. You will, okay, sorry, Mark will address, and Peter will address the inclusion dimension. So from the point of view of competitiveness, I just want to tell you briefly that if you asked me to address competitiveness 7 years ago, I would have told you that the main objective would have been to make our industry more efficient and make sure that we have access to efficient developments in the European Union. And that was, kind of a textbook economics kind of answer. Nowadays, we live in a little bit of a different world compared to 7 years ago, both for geopolitical reasons, but also because technology has evolved so much that nowadays we are talking about very advanced space solution. We talk about self-driving cars. We talk about a lot of technology which has really become a very important interface for people's life. And because of that, there are additional characteristics that our technologies have to take into account in terms of security, in terms of energy efficiency, and in terms of respecting the values that we have in the European Union. I am responsible for artificial intelligence, but also for robotics, photonics, and electronics. And these are all areas which will be funded in this pillar, which are very different from each other. You have areas like photonics and robotics, where Europe is well positioned. And then you have areas like electronics, where we are not that very well positioned. All the semiconductors are made elsewhere. We make components, we are good at doing that, but for the rest, we import. Half of the electronics in a satellite is actually imported. And this is a very serious issue. And I think that the dimension of autonomy, because of the application of electronics and digital in things like self-driving cars, in things like automated planes, and all the possible devices that will be increasingly surrounding us, has become much more important. So I think that compared to 7 years ago, the issue of autonomy, or actually better to call it a technological sovereignty, has become more important than it used to be. And I talked about electronics, and this is obviously true for other applications of space. But it is also true for raw materials, if you think about it, which is another area that we consider in this pillar, because it is not just about making sure that we don't get the raw materials from one country, and so far we've been trying to diversify our supply to reduce our risk. But in the future, it will be very important to think of alternative resources and also to think of being better at recycling. You know, when you recycle a mobile phone, actually there are so much important raw material that can be reused in a mobile phone that we should simply become much better at doing that. And that, of course, will be addressed by my colleague talking about planet.
Yes, I think this is another example of what has changed over the last years. Because in the previous program, or the current program, Horizon 2020, we have a pillar industrial leadership. At the time, nobody really thought about the sustainability, the environmental sustainability impact of industrial technologies. While now, in a way, it's obvious, I don't even have to talk about it, that one of the priorities for an industry cluster should be environmental sustainability, respecting the planetary boundaries. And of course, in this week, as already mentioned by Fernanda, and everybody talks about climate action. And so the context for this cluster, in a way, is clear. As Europe, we want to become the first climate neutral continent, and we want to do that with a competitive industry in Europe. And we can do that, but it requires a massive effort in breakthrough technologies for really ensuring that before 2050, our factories in Europe are climate neutral, circular, and clean. So this is therefore one of the three policy objectives that we have for this cluster, is to allow a climate neutral, circular, and clean industry. Now, what does that mean in practice? What do we need in terms of innovation to get there? I think there are two elements that we so far have reflected also in the research and innovation orientations. And on the one hand, you need these really breakthrough technologies for a more circular, resource-efficient, clean industry. Deep decarbonization of energy-intensive industries is obviously one that really requires massive efforts in innovation. But also things like industrial symbiosis, which was discussed yesterday at one of the sessions, circular economy technologies. But then there's also a very important role for the enabling technologies, things like artificial intelligence, space exploration, new materials, new manufacturing technologies. They can also contribute to really fostering a climate neutral circular industry, and then have their applications beyond industry in areas like mobility, energy. So those are the environmental sustainability aspects that we want to address with this cluster. In the web consultation that we had, I think it was largely confirmed that this is important, should be an important objective for the Cluster 4. And we are looking forward to more ideas today from you on how to make the best out of that. And then over to Peter for inclusiveness.
Thank you, Mark. And can I say how happy and prosper I am to be here? I think it's a wonderful concept and a recipe for success of the cluster to be with a member state, with the member states, and across the Commission services in charge of digital industry and space. So what about inclusiveness? Is there someone here who is against inclusiveness? No, obviously not. But I think we could, if I would ask the question, have you ever been tempted to think that inclusiveness is not the mandate of research and innovation policy and not the policy of, or the mandate of technology development? That it is rather for social policy, for employment policy, for labor market policy, for taxation policy? Well, that's probably true, but I think, and there I join Lucy when she said 7 years ago, we would have, when you said about what you said about competitiveness. Oh no, I forgot to start my 2-minute speech, so I have one minute left. Okay, Niklas, tell me when I'm too long. Okay, it is also our responsibility in this cluster, in the development of the important technologies, to think about inclusiveness up front. Because technology development is also a driver for rising inequalities. Europe is still quite good compared at global level, but also in Europe, the income inequalities, just to take one example, are increasing. The upper 10% are increasing their incomes faster than the lower 40%. Secondly, we see a phenomenon also driven by technology development, that the winner takes it all, that the benefits accumulate in some parts of the economy and therefore in some parts of the society. So we have some statistics saying that 30% of the productivity growth in the years from 2000 to 2016 were generated by only 5% of companies. Probably the digitized companies are there. So the question is not whether we should care about inclusiveness. The question is, we have to do that. The question is how. And I have a couple of ideas which are also in the program, but it would be great to have a discussion and to take up your ideas on that. It's first about skills, and we have some good experience with learning factories. It's second about involving, or better, making sure that citizens participate from the very beginning in this technology development. Thirdly, it is about knowledge valorization policies. And this is part of our mandate for prosperity, to work with member states to valorize knowledge, new technologies across, and diffuse technology across Europe. And fourthly, it is about inclusion of social sciences and humanities research from the very beginning of the technology development. So, but that is just 4 possible ideas. We might have more channels to do that. Inclusiveness, this is our shared responsibility. Thank you. Okay, you are the moderator. I get your chair.
Okay, now we will have some minutes, we will have half an hour for a discussion structured around the questions that have been raised via Slido. So if you want to still make some other questions, please go ahead. I think that each of the speakers here, they tackled an angle of what needs to be done and of what the discussions are underway. We are about to have a new commission. We are under very important negotiations right now, like the multi-annual financial framework, which will set the financing program for the period after 2020. So we are at the stage where it is important to rethink about all this and to and to decide where we are heading. Maybe we could take one or of the questions.
Place of frugal innovation. It's a very important concept. It's not natural to think, if we think of high tech, deep tech, that it should be also possible to do it cheaper. But I think we have ample evidence by now that this is not a question of development aid to invest in frugal technologies, but it's a question of getting faster to the market and widening the market for uptake of technology solutions. So we have this in the current Horizon 2020 program. We have actions on frugal innovation, and there is a session during these days here on tomorrow on low tech, frugal. So I think it's clear that it will play a role also in Horizon Europe.
And maybe Lucy or Mark, could you say something on what will be the place of circular economy in European industry in the Horizon Europe? Is this a priority of the program?
Of course, it is a priority, and in a way combined with the other question that is up there on how will the cluster be sure to contribute to reach the climate change targets, I would throw the question back to the 4 or 5 people who supported this question, actually. Where is your doubt? What should we strengthen in the orientations if you have doubts that we might not reach the targets or that circular economy might not be sufficiently represented? Because, of course, it is a very visible priority to have both the circular and clean industry in the cluster 4. So maybe the people who voted for that question could also explain a bit.
Thank you, Gina Dowding, MEP and Shadow Rapporteur on the Horizon Europe programme. So I'm very keen to understand this area. My understanding is that in Horizon 2020, there was an aspiration for this target of 35% to be spent on climate change research activities. It wasn't achieved. So now that target is now binding, but I can't see as yet how the criteria, the qualities are changing that we can be guaranteed. So that's what I want to know, how you think that we're going to go from that aspiration to actually achieving that. And in terms of the circular economy, it seems that we are at the moment measuring everything in terms of linear growth. And I'm not really sure the mechanisms in place to make this a reality, the circular economy criteria a reality.
Thank you very much. I start and leave Mark the difficult part. You're right that the 35% of Horizon 2020 investment in sustainability is probably not going to be met. But this is also a question of how we would measure the things which are coming, the investments from the bottom-up instruments like the European Research Council. So there we have some lessons learned. What the approach and the lesson learned actually is that we will now focus on only one target, and that's the 35% sustainability investment in Horizon Europe, and that we will upfront already in the programming agree on a methodology how to steer the project proposals and then how to measure and monitor. Guarantee. Let's see, but we have drawn the conclusions from Horizon 2020 and updated our methodology. So I think in that sense we can hope, and we would hope for the support from the Parliament that we can overachieve that target.
Before I give the floor, just very quickly on digital, it just makes me think that it is very difficult, however, to calculate really the impact that some of the actions that we have will have on climate change. And just taking the example of digital, which is the one that I know best, because you need digital to do a lot of the actions we have to undertake to improve our climate. And you can use, artificial intelligence can help you, optimizing energy and doing all sorts of things. On the other hand, a lot of artificial intelligence approaches like machine learning are actually very energy consuming. So and digital is known to be problematic from the point of view of waste. So we have to find a way also of comparing the positive and the negative impacts on technologies. And I find this very, very difficult to do. So I find it difficult to say, I invest in electronics, low-power chips. That's going to be really important for powering computing in an energy-efficient way in the future. But then I also know that the computers and those machines will be an important part of the waste, and that all those electronics will also be used for machine learning, which is very energy consuming. So I think we have to find also a better way in our program to measure these kind of impacts.
Yeah, then coming back to the circular economy question, of course, making the circular economy a priority of a research and innovation framework program will not make our economy circular. It's one important part of the broader circular economy strategy, And the president-elect, one of her priorities is a new Green Deal. And in that context, it's not only making Europe a climate-neutral continent, it's also a circular economy action plan 2.0. And in that context, of course, R&I in our cluster and also in other clusters of Horizon will play an important role. New recycling technologies, technologies that start in the product design with the materials already to enable the product to be circular. But the technology development alone will not make our economy circular. We need new business models, behavioral changes, and of course the market framework needs to be the right one for really going from a linear to a circular economy. But it is a priority for research and innovation as well, as we need both elements.
Well, maybe I could add that we recently met with one of the members of the board of Nokia, one big European company, and he showed us some slides stressing that the tech top 40 in the world were mainly composed by 21 companies in the US, 10 companies in China, and only 5 companies from the EU. So it's inevitable that we really need to go fast, and we really need to develop these technologies and go as fast as possible, because others in the global context are doing it. Maybe another question, that is the social inclusiveness and how the workforce, I don't know where the question is again, how the workforce is going to be taken into account and trained to be reconverted to the digital world.
Thank you. That relates to my cross-cutting point on inclusiveness. So I think it is very important that we are inclusive also in the way we do the programming and the projects, and doing it not for the workers but with the workers. And this is something which needs to be included. And I'm looking at you, Laurent, because I think that the question came from you, and it's a very nice question, needs to be included in the way we do the projects when it comes to the industrial dimension and the development within a factory. We have some very good experiences with learning factories, because it's not only a question about training for the job when you're young, but it's training on the job, where the profiles, and we know that the profiles for the job are changing so fast through digitization, through the current industrial revolution we're going through, that you need constant upskilling, and that is best done in the factories, and we can, with our projects, support that.
Does anyone want to add something? Of course, upskilling and reskilling of the workforce is one main issue that we should tackle. In Portugal, we are already taking some measures on that direction. We have a thriving ecosystem on technology, and we are the hosts of a big event that dynamizes our market, which is the Web Summit. It's a major private event that takes place in Lisbon, and it will stay for another 10 years. So it's a huge event that has dynamized also our youth, our workforce, and everyone is very much into tech now in our country.
Just to say that if you look at the portfolios that were distributed to the new commission, you will see that Commissioner Gabriel is now responsible for research, but also for the education policy. And so it is a very natural merge, if you want, of really bringing education where also the research is taking place, and being able to reorient maybe at an earlier stage in the discussions with the ministries of education on the basis of the new skills that will emerge very clearly from a research program. So I think that there is a lot of sense in doing that. That already shows that the Commission is going to take the education dimension as a priority also when reflecting on research programs, because the colleagues will be working together and therefore will be stimulated in building exactly this kind of bridges from the education system to the universities and the other research organizations.
And I would like to use this opportunity, as at the beginning we've seen there were quite a number of policymakers in the room, and I think they are not all colleagues from the Commission, so I guess it's national or regional policymakers. And what Lucy just said, this combination between innovation and skills, that really needs to happen on all the levels. And to give you one example, I heard from a CEO from a Finnish engineering company. Finland has the ambition to have 4% R&D spending, and he told us, well, that's good, but actually we don't have enough engineers to do all this research. And so when you have your regional or national research and innovation agenda, don't forget the skills that the workforce needs to actually then deploy the technologies, do the research and apply the technologies.
Do we take another one? What is your vision on positioning the Cluster 4 with respect to the 5 missions foreseen for first years of Horizon Europe? Who in the Commission wants to go ahead?
I see the cluster really relevant for all of the 5 mission areas. You cannot clean the oceans if you're not dealing with microplastics. You cannot make cities carbon neutral if you don't have the technologies for catalysis, for energy storage, for instance. You cannot fight cancer without medtech. You cannot clean the soils if we don't have the equipment for cleaning and regenerating the soil. So my vision is that those participants in our projects, the funding channels will contribute to the achievement of these missions and ensure that industry has a central place in providing the technology solutions and the technology, bringing the technologies together. Because the important thing we see in our projects is that the cooperation between academia, technology organizations and industry is, these cooperations are important and successful because they can ensure that the outcome is really in the market and not just in a shelf. So I think we have a central position in the, to sum up, this cluster, I see it as having a central position in all missions.
Do you want to add something to this question?
I don't really have something to add, but I just would fully agree, as I also said in the beginning. On the one hand, in this cluster, we look at the solutions, like for circularity, climate neutrality. On the other hand, we look at the enabling technologies. And these enabling technologies, they can contribute, or they need to contribute to any of these missions, as Peter explained for some of the examples.
Okay, maybe we can pass to another one. The new program should support SMEs with the challenges and burdens of digitalization. And which form of support do you foresee?
Well, this program is a research program, and it supports research by small, medium enterprises, as it has always done. So it is obviously open to small, medium enterprises. I can tell you that when we have, like, for example, the joint undertakings, we always make a point in making sure that they very much reach out to small, medium enterprises as much as possible. But then when it comes to, I don't see the question anymore. When it comes to burden of digitalization, then I interpret that for being how are we making sure the small medium enterprises keep up to date with digital technologies, because the changes are very fast and it is not always simple to be able to remodernize business models to use mainstream technologies. But there, we are not necessarily in the field of research anymore. So what we are doing in that case is that we have proposed a new program. It's called the Digital Europe program. And in this program, we will support technology organizations that we call the Digital Innovation Hubs, which will be helping small, medium enterprises to uptake technologies such as artificial intelligence or applications for high-performing computing or cybersecurity applications, so that they can really get concrete help to change their business models with digital and remain mainstream. Of course, some of these activities, well, we did support digital innovation hubs in Horizon before, but in a different way. When we support digital innovation hubs in the research program, there we are really supporting very innovative SMEs who need to test very advanced innovation. So in that case, we are basically supporting things like pilot lines in photonics or in electronics. It's a bit different from what we will do in the Digital Europe program, which will really be about reaching out to the small, medium enterprises, understanding which data they have. So in a way, it's a bit closer to the market than what we have done in the past.
Anyone want to add something on SMEs and how they will be supported?
Lucy mentioned the digital innovation hubs, and we took that as an inspiration. And I think, Mark, it will be very likely that as part of the future industrial policy, there will be an element on technology infrastructures for upscaling. And these infrastructures will also be highly relevant for the small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe. So I think we have to look at it from this perspective. What are the facilities, the equipment, the services we can put at the disposal of companies to upscale and overcome burdens, not only in digital, there could also be material or space technologies, but also including digital.
Maybe I could add that SMEs is important to have them in the value chains, because maybe they cannot be the leaders of a certain sector, but they can certainly participate very accurately in a value chain. So that's also part of the work that we discussed in the IPSE forum, as I said before. Maybe we'll take another. We still have time, Nicholas?
Yes.
Okay.
12 minutes.
Okay. Are you going to include the expertise of economists, sociologists, of work, historians, legal and policy researchers, human-machine interactions experts to make the cluster a success?
Well, colleagues can then complement, of course. My direct answer would be, it's not up to us to include this expertise, but it's up to the consortia who make proposals in the program to be inclusive and not just come from one technology angle, but have an interdisciplinary team. Because often it's this cross-fertilization between different disciplines that actually then creates completely new breakthroughs. But I wouldn't prescribe that somebody should compulsory include a sociologist or historian in a specific topic.
If I can compliment on that, certainly not prescribing, but the way we describe what we want, the impact we want, and the Horizon Europe ambition is to be more ambitious, more demanding on the expected outcome and the impact. The way we describe that will open new doors for the participation of architects, of urban planners, of social scientists, of anthropologists, and that would be very welcome. But we are not prescribing it.
Just one quick comment. I do expect a lot of participation of economists and sociologists and others in the artificial intelligence teams that will apply to our program.
Well, yes, I also would like to add something. I think that in the recruitment processes, we are a little bit watching that in the big tech firms. I've followed one or two recruitment processes for a matter of curiosity, and in fact, tech companies will hire people with different skills and from different areas. So it's a very good combination that all these people and with different features are associated. So, what does the panel think are the most important actions in the Horizon Europe Pillar 2 to better enhance industry participation? Anyone? Competitiveness? You?
For me, what I, on the basis of my experience, the mechanism of public-private partnerships and joint undertakings is very, very important to ensure industry participation. And I could observe also how successful it has been through these partnerships to have research areas which one would traditionally consider a bit more, at a lower level of maturity, than being taken up by industry, because industry, through the partnership, has the possibility immediately to spot what certain developments are. I've just observed this in Excel, which is the joint undertaking on electronics. And there is an area very complicated, it's called neuromorphic computing. And here, for example, the research has always been at the level of the research organizations. And now, through Excel, all of a sudden, we saw at the beginning very timid steps of industry proposing projects in that area, because of course they have to get together, and now this has become much more of a reality, and the participation of industry is more and more important. So in a way I see a partnership also the possibility for industry to see what emerging research areas are and get accustomed with them much quicker than probably without.
Oh, this is an important question, because in the current program, we have a specific pillar for leadership in industrial technologies, where we had the highest attraction for industrial players. And we want to be commensurate with what we have achieved in industry participation in Horizon 2020 for Horizon Europe. Partnerships are one important element. I think further simplification is important. We are already quite fast. So that is in time to contract. So simplification, and I think also less prescriptive topics, so that we are giving an inspiration without going too much into the detail of how will facilitate industry participation.
I fully agree with these elements. By giving a sense of direction without then really specifying what exactly we want, it's much more attractive for industry, because they might have different solutions in mind than the policy officer who is drafting a work program. And therefore an open description should always be more attractive, and of course simplification is crucial. That's what we always hear from industry. But maybe also, and we are talking a lot, and you are typing questions, but maybe industry representatives from your perspectives tell us what we need to improve to further enhance industry participation.
Anybody wants to answer to the question that Mark raised? How can we enhance industry participation?
Some ideas?
Yes.
Pekka Koponen. I'm chairman of Innovation and Competitiveness Council at Technology Industries of Finland, and as well as running innovation consultancy Spinverse. And first of all, okay, it was my question, and I was very happy of the answers, because I think you have listened. That our message has been that kind of bottom up rather than top down. Then partnerships kind of keep them, and keep them programmed by the industry. So don't bring the writing back to the Commission. Kind of, you have trusted industry to do the call texts. Please keep that trust, because that is the way how you get the buy-in already at the time when the call is out, the industry is already in. And I think there has been discussion in some partnerships like BBI. There has been talk about the commitment of the industry. There was a misconception in the beginning that industry was asked to put a lot of cash down at the beginning of the JU, and that doesn't work. Kind of, you cannot go to ask industry to put billions into something that they might get money in later on. After that cash deduction was taken out, then it has been very successful, and there has been a lot of projects, a lot of commitments, and I think we are in a very good track. But I think as a last comment I'd like to make is, yesterday there was a founding of European Working Group of Innovation Consultants, and we had in the room the leading innovation consultants in Europe, and we also would like to kind of start to raise the voice of professional project management. I think the European projects deserve experts who are dedicating their life on kind of driving good projects, and also that should be compensated in a market way. So that is one of the activities. The consultants bring industry in.
I think that's a good idea. Well, from my point of view, from what I see, I also think that in Europe, research and development are done, and a lot is spent on that, actually. The problem is that some of this innovation never gets to the market, and I think that we should be more able to bring innovation and bring the results of research to the market and sell it. So, okay. Anyone want to add something else? How to ensure proper balance between enabling techno and space? Who from you wants to answer?
Where is the benchmark? Where is the benchmark? The question is tricky because one of the novelties of Horizon Europe is that we have only one budget line per cluster. That makes it much more flexible, much more risky for us in planning, in allocation of resources, and perhaps also in keeping our jealousy at bay. So if everything goes to digital, I would be jealous about Lucy and her success. But so I think we cannot set this, and we will not, we do not want to set this in stone and in budgetary figures now. We want to see what are the demands, where are the most promising project proposals, and then see how this balances out. So it's not top-down from the beginning. What I do see as a big advantage with this cluster and the one budget line is that we can provide better coordination, which is happening in space. And you mentioned space at the beginning, how important it is all around, you said.
Even if we don't notice.
Yeah. And there is a lot of possibilities for technology spillovers from space to manufacturing, for instance, or from materials development to space.
Just to complement, because indeed from the space side, there are in a way two objectives. One is really space related. We have the European space programs, and we need to ensure that we have the technological capacities to develop them further and lead on that side. And on the other hand, space is really an enabler, as other enabling technologies, as digital technologies, that then can provide solutions for a cleaner industry, a smarter industry, for societal challenges across the program in a way. And then it doesn't really matter what the budgetary balance is, because all of these technologies in the end contribute to the same objective.
Okay, now Nicholas.
So it's now time to wrap up, and we have prepared a word cloud whereby we are asking you to send us ideas as 1 or 2 words that if there are certain resonances, we will see them in the screen. If many people come up with the same 1 or 2 words, we might see them bigger on the screen. Otherwise, if there are many ideas, we will collect them and think about them later. So please go ahead with your very brief 1 or 2 word ideas. Then our panel will wrap up.
Can we do that too?
Yes, go ahead, Peter.
Thank you.
Well, some people are still writing the words, but maybe we could already comment on them. Please, Nicholas.
So this is very nice in a way, because inclusiveness and skills figure very large, obviously. And it is one of the relatively new elements of this cluster. So it is something for all of us to think about, how to incorporate inclusiveness and skills in our projects and our thinking. Now, there are several other interesting ideas that we see. In fact, several of them are the same, but they have been spelled in different ways. So some of them are bigger than they look. So we will analyze this carefully. And but now missions and value chains figure fairly large. And of course, sustainability. By relocate EU industry, we understand bring EU industry, keep EU industry in Europe.
Not somewhere else.
Well, I think this is already showing us not only the discussion here, but what worries people and what worries Europeans for the next stage. I mean, inclusiveness and skills are really two of the words that stand out. Collaboration, of course, I mean, between member states, between the institutions and member states. 35% sustainability. And of course, all this has to make sense, and societal impact. SMEs was very mentioned here. The missions, materials. Anyway, this all has been tackled during the discussion here. Maybe we could pass to the wrap-up and taking into account these words and these concerns that appear to be here. What could you say, and in order, Lucy, Mark, and Peter, for the wrap-up of the discussion?
I find it interesting to see the societal dimension coming out so strong, because I think the skills is a part of our societal dimension. Of course, we have to find the appropriate way of addressing skills. You know that is also addressed by other programs, not only Erasmus, but also structural funds and also the European Social Fund. So we have to find the appropriate way of building it into into this particular research program beyond what is already the Marie Curie section of the research program. I do think, I am convinced, and people who know me know this, I'm convinced that for me our capability of being updated in Europe in terms of skills is probably one of the most important challenges that we have for the future.
Well, for me, looking at this word cloud is very interesting to see that there's a little one on cats and a little one on digital, but basically technology is not mentioned, which shows in a way, and the title of this one was Industry for People and Planet, which is all about the purpose of innovation. And in that context, I was also thinking, Fernanda, you will be tomorrow at the Competitiveness Council meeting where the industry ministers will discuss a sustainable agenda, an integrated agenda for sustainable growth. And this simply shows that this is part of a bigger picture. Horizon Europe is a crucial tool to fund the research innovation that we need to achieve broader objectives. And it's not research for doing research. And this comes, I think, very clearly out of this word cloud. And also from the comments, questions received that often actually went far beyond what we can do with the research program as such.
For me, it's a very nice provocation and a big surprise. I think it's a very strong message for our future commissioner, Maria Gabriel, who will also be in charge of education. So in that sense, it's a very good encouragement and a big message. I'm surprised to see the difference with our public consultation, where skills and inclusiveness was very important, 82%, but clean, sustainable industry was even more important from the 6,000 persons and institutions who replied. So I'm missing that here, but this is only, I think, a reflection that we didn't have enough time to speak about that.
Well, thank you. If I may add, of course, my perspective is a little bit different from the institutions, but I think that these words meet also the conclusions that I would already think before. So skills is clearly a word that interests us and something that we are looking into very deeply with concern. I think that in Europe we should identify the sectors where Europe can make a difference and work on those sectors. And of course, maintain the incentives for European companies to continue to invest in research and innovation. So as I was saying, the top 40 tech companies, only 5 are in Europe. So we need to think about this. And of course, promote the synergies between Horizon Europe and all the other programs for the financing. And lastly, push the EU single market, because the EU single market, that's the real home market for us. And we should have it as a positive reference for us and work on it and deepening it. So I think that this all comes to the same conclusions, and we are in syntony, both from a member state point of view or in the Commission point of view, and of course the audience, which has highlighted these important messages, both for member states and for the European Commission. Thank you all. I think that was very interesting.